Welcome to another episode of Faith, Frontlines Fortune. I'm your host, Anderson Salgado, and today I got a good buddy of mine, John Bundy. John and I have been jamming for the last month and a half, and I think is again a great message and a great journey where us entrepreneurs go through, and sometimes we just meet the coolest people that we resonate with. John's got a great story. I'm not gonna give anything away, but he's in a beautiful place called Puerto Rico, in Rincón, Puerto Rico, and he is the host of the Morning Fuel podcast. John, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about you and what the heck are you doing in Puerto Rico, buddy?
Well, long story short, I guess I've had an entrepreneurial heart for a very long time. Every time I worked someplace, I was always kind of looking at my supervisors and going, do I want their job? And most of the time the answer was no. So I'd always be inventing and kind of creating, trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grow up. So as soon as I grow up, maybe I'll figure that out. But I'm 53 years old right now. I've been doing a podcast, the Morning Fuel podcast, since 2019. We interview local business owners, entrepreneurs, pastors, and missionaries, and we try and discover what is the fuel that keeps them moving, what gets them up in the morning, what keeps them going through adversity and like that. And it's one of my favorite things to do, but it's not the only thing that we do to pay the bills. We also do design, video editing, podcast production, content creation, kind of all that stuff, along with anything new that comes to mind. So right now, my wife and I are not retiring, but refiring in Puerto Rico. We love it here. So we're starting businesses here. We're continuing to do the podcast. And we're going to see what happens.
Dude, I love it. And for those of you who cannot see John's background, he's in the most ethnic, most realistic background. He's in the middle of the street in Rincón, Puerto Rico, just doing the podcast, and it looks phenomenal. And then for those of you who are listening to the background, from time to time you're gonna hear some music and some people. That's because again, he's in the middle of the street doing the podcast with the entire equipment, and it looks fantastic. So John, I appreciate that, and I think what you're doing is great. I want to do super deep dives into what you're doing, because I think, and you and I have had a conversation on the matter, but I think what you're doing is phenomenal because it's your calling. And oftentimes we find or hear this calling at 23 or at 30 or at 53, in my case at 38, and the calling oftentimes deviates from what we're doing altogether. And I love to understand a little bit more what that calling was for you, because you put it so casual, so eloquently, but I think for those of you who know, moving is a pain in the neck, and for you to just grab your wife and say, honey, we're just moving to Puerto Rico and I'm going to do this, and it's going to be the greatest adventure that we'll ever go through, besides being married to you, I'm sure. But I love to hear, what was that whole thought process? Because a lot of us have thought going to a place where perhaps it's not native to us and say, I want to move here. Walk me through that process of understanding, what was the message? What did God tell you as your mission? I want to know, from the place where you thought about it to the execution to now being in there, and how is it going? Where did that strength come from? And then also, your wife has so much faith in you to be able to do this in a place that perhaps is not native to you. But talk to me about that process.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say my wife is an amazing woman. When God gave her to me, He was smiling upon me. I was marrying up. She's the one that took the risks, because I'm 53, but I'm actually 5 on the inside. Star Wars fan, and I am that Luke Skywalker, doing everything for the first time. Wow. How did I? Well, we went on our 25th wedding anniversary. I wanted to do something special. So in 2022, October 2022, we went to Puerto Rico for the first time. My sister lives here, and she had a place for us to stay. So we came down, and I'm not a big fan of the beach. Never really have been. Since I was a kid, I grew up on Long Island, and we always went to the South Shore, and went to the beach. It was just hot. I remember peeing in the parking lot because you're barefoot running across the asphalt, and then you got a mile of hot sand before you actually get to the water that you don't actually want to swim in because you watched the movie Jaws when you were young, and you weren't getting in that water. So it really wasn't a lot of fun. But so we came down here, and I thought, well, my wife likes the warmth and she loves the beach, and we brought our youngest daughter with us, who is 17 at the time. Came down, and almost from the moment we set foot in the plaza, pretty much the town center. Each one of the towns here has one. So Rincón, Puerto Rico. I I fell in love, and the whole time I was wondering, why did I feel like I was home? It was so weird. So this white kid feeling like he's home in a Latin country, and I mean, though it is a territory of the United States, it still feels very foreign. But it was just one of those feelings, and I couldn't get it out of my head. So when we got home after our 2 week anniversary vacation, we I immediately booked another trip. So I booked another trip for the first couple of weeks in December, which is when my birthday is. Came down, helped my sister with some of her Airbnb properties, doing some maintenance and stuff like that. And the whole time, each day would end, I'd go back to the apartment and talk to God. Why are you drawing me here? What do you want us to do? So that was a discovery over 2 years. I really knew it was the direction we needed to go when I started sharing this idea with my wife, and she was on board. That was the miracle. Usually it's just some crazy idea. I see the side eyes, and the look. And this time she was actually feeding into the dream and the vision, and it's become something that we're doing together. And we're both 53 years old. This is new. We feel like immigrants. We came to this country with nothing, and literally nothing. Our house is still for sale in Virginia for the past 5 months, and we came here with nothing. I mean, we literally can fit everything in maybe about 4 bags of luggage, moving from apartment to, we just got into a rental home. But we have our first guests coming down for the experience that we're being called to do, to help God's children find rest, and that's what we're doing. I mean, that's the nutshell story.
Dude, I love that, and I think the sentiment is well received simply because even my wife and I, we were in Italy in March, and there is something magical about you being in a place, perhaps again, where you feel foreign and you say, I could do this. The lifestyle is different. There is happiness. You wake up and you feel rejuvenated because you're doing something new. And unfortunately, I still think the United States is the greatest country in the world, but it doesn't feel like that anymore. It just doesn't feel like that home of the brave that you and I grew up with, right? And I'm as you know, I'm an immigrant myself, but the US is my home. But when we went to Italy, I felt it. I felt that same thing that you're talking about right now, that calling to go and say, I could work remotely. I could do this thing. You took it one step further, and this is why I think that there is bravery in what you're doing. You took it one step further and you said, I'm going to do something completely different than I'm doing right now. At least I'm thinking, well, I could probably do the same work I'm doing now, but in Italy. You were like, no, we're going to do something else. But that's that calling. Oftentimes we talk about God speaking to us, but some people can debate it and say, well, no, that's your subconscious. And saying things like, well, that's just you manifesting your desire to do something else. And then you put the voice of God in the, no, that's the voice of God. I want to ask you the following, because oftentimes I ask myself the same question, and anytime that I have doubted, then I stop hearing that voice. But then I hear it again, and when I act on it, I hear it more often. When you hurt this thing, and your mission right now is to, again, bring people not only on your Morning Fuel podcast, but also bring people to Puerto Rico and have a different experience. But your mission also, from what I know about you, it's coaching and entrepreneurship and helping others. When you told this to your wife and she has this level of doubt, but you were set and you're there now, do you feel that mission now is somewhere closer to what God put you to, or for you to create? And what do you think is next? What is the voice telling you that oftentimes we suppress it because it scares us of, inability to do what we set out to do, what God is asking us to do? But oftentimes it's because it's difficult, and sometimes we go against to what's difficult. So you hear this voice, you commit to it, and now you live in it. What else do you think is the voice telling you? What do you think your next steps are? What do you think your mission is? And where do you see John in the next 5 years?
That's a great question. I guess I've always kind of been this guy with a level of faith above my abilities. I'm not afraid when I hear that voice, and I'm a ready, shoot, aim type guy, and it gets me in a lot of trouble, especially with my wife. The fact that she was along with me and feeding into the dream, and this is finally the one thing where I wasn't kind of having to drag her along, though, like you mentioned earlier, moving is hard. I never really had a problem with that, but I know that my wife does. So that was really the issue that was on my mind, that she hates to move. She just kind of likes to settle. And so for the fact that she agreed to go along, that was a huge confirmation to me. So it gave me a lot more bravery. But I continue to get myself in trouble each day with the faith. But I have, along with that, the word that I continue to get is trust. I have to do that every morning when I wake up. When I go to bed and I've got those kind of doubts and how is this going to happen? We're really bootstrapping it. We're going, we're going full on, forward at full speed with very little budget, very little capital, and I'm trying to keep things, to small. We're a skeleton crew. It's just my wife and I for what we're doing, but we continue to also meet people that are having similar visions and dreams. Like, for example, the other day, we started going to a church about 3 weeks ago. I finally found a spot that I really felt like was home, and every Sunday, it's like the pastor's reading our mail, which is great. That's confirmation too. We sit there, my wife and I look at each other. We're not ribbing each other in the, we're not ribbing each other with our elbows. We're just kind of like agreeing that, yeah, okay, here's confirmation of that we're doing the right thing, and not only are we here for God, but He's here for us. We met this couple the other day at church. They were first timers, and we'd only been there for a couple weeks. We went to dinner with them, and come to find out, they're being called here to a mission of building Airbnbs for rest for God's people. I mean, if that's not confirmation, I'd never heard of that before. So if that's not confirmation, I don't know what is. Now we get to work with them. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we don't want to do this by ourselves. And we all kind of shared that conversation. And, we're here first starting something that they're wanting to start. So we're making connections, and we're going to be able to help them when they come here. And we're probably going to partner together on some aspects. We don't have the places to stay, but I mean, if they have, Airbnbs, we have places for our people to stay when they come down. That's right. That's right. So, that confirmation along the way happens every day. And when we have tough struggles, my wife and I, with decisions we need to make, I mean, we've got a home that's still on the market back in Virginia. It's been on the market since we left over 5 months ago now. So that's been a struggle. So we're paying a mortgage, and we're paying for rent and living expenses here. So I've lost a lot of weight because I'm eating like one meal a day. So it's just been one of those things. But the fear goes away when you have a word, and you know that you know that you know you're called to do something, no matter how crazy it seems to other people. So, as we're moving forward, there's little fear on my part, and I just need to gently reassure my wife when she's kind of feeling the fear and the pressure of it, that we're doing the right thing, and then I just kind of point to everything that's happened already, and the fear kind of melts away. So we just keep on moving forward.
Man, I hear you talk about this, like the conversation my wife and I had not too long ago. And I have the same sentiment for my wife as you do for yours. She's amazing. Not only she's amazing, but she's the best supportive system I have. And I think that's what we're called out to do as men. And call me whatever. Like I think the terminologies are like misogynist and all this thing. Call me whatever, but being the head of my household and being the leader I need to be, um, I can't do it alone. I need the best supporting system I can, and my wife is it. And I hear you speak, and it reminds me of Proverbs 3:5, where it says, "Trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." My friend, let me tell you, my path always leads to Him, and I don't know how to put this with better words, but I came to realize that I am nothing without him. And he sets all the path. And he has told me, make a shift. I'm like, but I don't want to. And I'm sure that you felt the same way. It's like, God, really? Is this what you want me to do? And then all of a sudden he's like, yep, that's exactly what I want you to do. Okay, honey, pack and go. What about the mortgage? We'll continue to make payments on it and God will provide. And but what about this? We will figure it out. And what about this? I can do that. You do this. God will do the rest. And the more I talk about this, and the more I talk to you about it, is the words resonate within my head and say to me, what you're doing is right because you have met amazing people, including John. But you know the path is right when you meet people that have that same alignment as you. And you meeting that couple, perhaps it's confirmation. But here's the sad portion. Even if they go out to do, and you guys are great friends for years, and then all of a sudden you fall apart, at least you still got the Lord that led you to what you're doing right now. And I think what you're doing is great. And I love that you say, I'm I'm one of those guys that is not afraid of just jumping on that grenade, or how you equally put it. You want to make sure that you're not afraid of the voice of God's voice that is telling you. What do you think, at least for a lot of us, and you put potentially included, what do you think happens when we don't listen to that voice? When we hear it, but we don't listen to it and we don't act on it because again, our fear of rejection, of failure, or whatever the case may be, and we end up doing whatever it is that we end up doing. As entrepreneurs, we hear it all the time, and we know the right thing to do is X, but we're going to struggle with profitability. Or we know that the right answer is something else, but then we still lean in our own understanding instead of relying on God's understanding. In your eyes, what has happened those times that you haven't listened to the voice and you have done whatever you wanted to do? What goes on?
Are you familiar with the movie Groundhog Day? Have you ever seen
I've heard
Groundhog?
of it.
Bill Murray, he was a rotten person. He was a weatherman, and he thought he like was God. Very very good, fun comedy movie. Uh, but he got stuck in a town that he hated, and every morning when he woke up at 6 a.m., it was the same day. So he's stuck in this place he hates. It
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
was
Old movie. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
so I had an experience when I was about 31 years old. It was my birthday, And my wife and I had an argument, and I don't remember what the argument was about. I have no idea, could not tell you. But I remember having this feeling like I know God speaks to me through movies and stories. And so I said, you know what? We're going to go home. We're going to watch Groundhog Day. I really feel like God's going to speak to us through that movie. So halfway through the movie, she's asleep on the couch. And I'm sitting there kind of like with my arms crossed. And then there's a part of the movie that comes up where, spoiler alert, I'm sorry if you haven't seen it yet, you should watch it, but whatever, where he winds up wanting to take his own life because he doesn't want to be stuck in this day anymore. But every time he takes his life, he wakes up the next morning at 6 a.m. I started, for some reason, I had a notebook and I started, I sound like a nut, and I started tallying how many times he was taking his life. And by the end of that sequence, it was 31 times, and it was my 31st birthday. And I started bawling. I was like, I'm stuck in Groundhog Day. What do I do? Well, even after that experience, I felt like that over and over again. And I think that those times when we hear the voice of God and we don't do, we're afraid, or, whatever it is, we logically feel like, we don't have the money to do this, or I don't have the skill to do this, or I don't have the people to do this, or whatever it is, whatever the excuse is, he gives us another chance, but we wind up going around the mountain and going around the mountain. And then we are again. And I came to believe that there's work that God's calling us to do that he's going to hold for us to eventually get to the point where we can do it. He's giving us encouragement each time. You can do it. You can do it, son. You can do it, daughter. But I also believe that there are times where he's got some urgent work that needs to get done now. And if we don't do it, he's got another kid out there that's brave enough and he gives it to them. So we can miss out on, and I know I have missed out on things, that exploits that God's wanted me to go on with him. He's not sending us out alone, and he gives it to somebody else because that urgently needs to be done right now. There are lives at stake here for the kingdom, for eternity, right? So, it's those two things basically. So that kind of helps me become brave, because if I feel he's calling me to do this thing, and my prayer is, if it's not of you, God, if this isn't you, Father, and I start moving in this direction, stop me. Put a wall up, something in my way, so that, you know, the work, if it's not of you, it doesn't need to be done. But if you're calling me to do this, you're going to line up everything that needs to happen, everybody that I need to meet, all the resources. I heard this said once, probably a pastor. He says, where God guides, God provides. So I believe that happens, and I'm seeing that as we're venturing into this territory that we've never been before, and we're doing something we've never done before with no resources, and God keeps bringing the people and the resources and the encouragement to do the work he's called us to do. It hasn't stopped yet. We haven't arrived. We still have no capital, but along the way, it's working out, and that's fine. That's fine by me. I think as our faith builds, and as we have the faith to, I don't know how you would say this, like to contain what he's giving us. As that grows, he gives us a bigger containment unit. So right now we've got this small containment unit, and once that thing is maxed out and it stays maxed out, well, he's got to make it bigger. So he's doing that work, and when he does it, we move on to the next thing, and we've got a little bit more money in our bank account to do the bigger things that he wants us to do.
Dude, I totally agree. And the reason why I totally agree, because if you had the funding that you needed, perhaps you wouldn't be doing all the stuff that you're doing. You would be doing something else. And that's not the calling. I I recently through my readings and with some of the sermons that I went through with church. Yeah, are you familiar with the story of the blind man in John chapter 9, where God healed or Jesus healed this blind man who was blind at birth, and the disciples ask him, "Who's at fault, him or his parents? Who sinned, him or his parents?" And he said, "Neither him or his parents. This is the will of God, because that man has a mission." And when he gave him sight, his parents were the blind men were parents were questioned, And when they were questioned, they were afraid. It's like, hey, ask him. We don't know anything about this man who gave him sight. And when they asked the gentleman, where they asked the blind man, that the man's identity is never revealed. He said, I all I know is I couldn't see, and he healed me. And he was perhaps also afraid of the Pharisees at the time, but he said it in a very confrontational way, to go and say, listen, I was blind, now I see. He's got a mission for me. In a nutshell, that's how I feel. And I think hearing you, that's perhaps how you feel, where I was blind and now I see, and I'm just doing the mission that God set me out to do. And that's not fully revealed. There are many missions, right? And sometimes the missions will change and we do not understand it. But a true testament of my mission is that I met you, I met people like Hap Chatfield, I met Spencer Davis, I met all these gentlemen who are strong, are masculine, they want to provide, they want to protect, they love God above all, they love their wives, they love their family, they want to do something else to proclaim God as and Jesus as our savior, but more importantly, they're unapologetic and unafraid of saying it. And I think that's, to me, the being unafraid. I don't want to be apologetic anymore. I don't need to appeal to anybody but him. And I think this is the best way we can do it, by one, relating to people like us, but more importantly, being unafraid of saying it. And I think you're brave for doing what you're doing. And I commend you for it. And I am sure that as time passes by, your wife will be even in more alignment to what you're doing, because she sees the mission. Pivoting a little bit, in the business world, that is not often black and white, because we have, as you probably know, we have financial commitments. And you kind of mentioned it, okay, when God guides, God will provide. And I completely agree. But it's kind of that relatable story where if you're driving and you got Jesus in the passenger seat and he says, let go. And you're like, but I'm driving. And he's like, let go. And then you see the car shifting right as you let go. And then your immediate reactions try to grab it. I oftentimes feel that way, that I have to grab the wheel. And then he just like smacks me in the hand and says, let go. And it's sometimes so hard to let go. What would you say it's the best dynamic between a man and a woman, or a husband and a wife, to understand that sometimes your calling is something that, again, you do not know where it's going to lead you, but you know that it's the right thing to do because God is sending you to? What has been your best experience, to frame the word more eloquently, and that dynamic between you and your wife, to know that what you're doing is to satisfy him, and you two are just along with the ride, but convincing her it's also a task on itself? How do you build that trust with your significant others, that she sees the vision and the calling, and she's not the one grabbing the wheel on that vehicle, because you two are just, in this particular case, you're passengers? What Talk to me about that dynamic, because I think as an entrepreneur, especially men entrepreneurs, we run into this issue all the time, where we say to our wives, baby, I think we're going to have to do this. My wife is awesome. And she's like, baby, whatever you think is right, we'll do. But oftentimes convincing them of that vision, of that dream, is very difficult. What did you have to do in order for you to convince your wife, to sell her the dream, to ensure that she's aware of the mission, and to know that satisfying him ultimately and unfortunately is more important?
I guess I maybe out of fear, I want to say, I don't know the answer to that question, but I believe I do. And I think it's very much multifaceted. Not being able, not being afraid or too afraid to tell your wife you don't know the answer to that question, but also at the same time instilling confidence in her that you're seeking out the answer. You're not just leaving it there, especially if it's something scary. You're getting ready to do something. The house isn't sold yet, and you're going to another country. Um, I think that, excuse me. I think that, excuse me. I'm just going to get some water real quick. I think that for us, making sure that she's in on the communication. Um, I'm very much not a details person. I'm a big vision person, so I can see it clearly. I see the whole big picture, and then I just start moving. What scares her is not seeing the details. So I've got the details in my head. If I can get with her on the details and talk with her about that, and then ask her, questions like, "What do you think we should be paying attention to?" and giving her the floor, that has been very successful. And that's really just happening with me recently. I don't know when I got that, but God just started asking me, what do you need to be paying attention to? And, surroundings, thoughts about the little details that need to all get in line before you can do that one thing. I think that that's been the key for us, has been really bringing my wife into, to sow into the dream, the vision, bringing her own ideas. She's got superpowers that I don't possess, and vice versa. So when I start moving with confidence in my abilities, and I don't kind of tap into her abilities, only half the work is going to get done, or it's not going to get done at all. But when we both allow each other in on the conversation, and even if they're not part of doing a particular, it's like, going to your job every day. Your wife's not coming to the job with you, but if you have things going on and you're kind of trying to work things out in your head, maybe include your wife in on the conversation. you know um, a lot of us guys have a lot fewer words than our wives do, so we're out of words by the time we get home, especially if we're working like a full-time job. She's still got some. So just kind of shutting her down when, after we get home, and not having further conversations. Maybe all you have to do is listen. You don't have to use any of your words, you know, grunt every once in a while, but have her in on the conversation, and share with her, you know, I think occasionally sharing, even though I'm confident, sharing my fears with my wife is important, even though I know I'm prepared and ready and on track to overcome that fear, because I'm having faith and I'm trusting in the Lord. But I'm afraid, like the kids standing on the edge of the pool, daddy's saying to jump in and they're just hesitating, even though they have their water wings on. You know, we're there, we're ready, we're just about ready to jump. And we're building up the bravery to do it. We know we're going to get it because we've been here before. But our wives don't know or understand that because we haven't said anything to them about it. So I think including them in on the conversation is the best advice that I could give.
Yeah, man, I think that's sound. And one of the things that I could add to that, if any, is as men we have to be as stand up as possible. I made a lot of mistakes in the past. I made mistakes in my previous marriage from being childish and not following God's word. But when you're an individual that is trustworthy, and you have your wife's confidence, when you start making a lot of mistakes outside of the marriage, then she doesn't trust you on any of the other decisions that you make within the marriage. But if she's like, hey, I, he's never done this, so I shouldn't doubt him on this decision now, or he's been truthful or transparent with me in the past with this subject, although this is not relatable or related, then I can trust him that he's going to do the right thing. So I I agree with you. Communication is going to be key, especially to have our wives buying into it. And the reason why I pose the question is because anytime that I speak to an entrepreneur, especially male entrepreneurs who are the founders or the CEOs, and they want to lead the company in a good direction, I oftentimes ask them, have you sold the vision and the dream to your staff? Because they're the ones that are going to get you to that next level. They're the ones that are going to be supporting you whenever you're doing your delegation. They need to buy into the dream as much as your wife would in order for you to get that mission accomplished. Otherwise, you're going to be running into a lot of friction. And now you're just trying to mitigate with the issues internally and not scaling the business the way that you want it externally. I know you're doing a lot of coaching too, and you're bringing people into the country and doing things like, again, vacations, and you're giving them a different experience. You're doing the Morning Fuel podcast to walk them through a process of understanding their own business, understanding what their customers' needs or what their best interest in mind should be in order for scaling their business. Are those two intertwined where you're seeing a different dynamic being in Puerto Rico and working through business owners who have perhaps a different mindset? Or are you seeing kind of the same thing where there's a lot of doubt in entrepreneurs on taking the next step? That leap of faith is not there. There's a lot of there's a lot of individuals who are not encouraged. What do you say the dynamic is right now on the coaching side for entrepreneurs? Are you seeing the same of are you seeing a lot of the same, which is doubt and hesitation, pulling the trigger, understanding what action items look like, or are you seeing a little bit more hopeful of a new entrepreneurship wave where people want to get into scaling their business, being more intertwined with God and God principle and biblical principles in order for them to grow their business? What are you seeing right now between the two, if I may ask?
Yeah, sure. I think that, as it says in the word, it says, we shall overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And that's a big part of what we do at Morning Fuel Podcast is sharing the stories, because our story doesn't belong to us. Our story is going to set other people free. We went through what we went through for a reason, for a time. And I think that when I share with a business owner that is getting ready to, they've got a grand idea, they're getting ready to launch a new product, or they're getting ready to start their own podcast. And that's where I do most of my coaching, is helping people to start their own podcast, because we've done it for several years. We have our methods, and I like to keep things simple and cost effective. So I share that with people. And what I see is when I share a story with someone that is perhaps tentative, a little timid on jumping into the next thing, they hear what my wife and I have done and they get brave. So we share our stories with people, and it gives them some courage. So that's pretty much where the lion's share of the coaching that I do is really is more on the encouragement side. You can do it. I believe in you. What do you love? I wind up asking people many times, okay, you're doing this. This sounds great, but what do you really want to do? Like if, we've heard this before, if money were no object, you didn't have to, if your family was going to be provided for and, food on the table, roof over your head, clothes, you guys are going to be, living comfortably. What is it that you would do if you didn't have to think about money? And it usually turns out being something different than what they're already doing, or a bigger version of what they're currently doing. So I think more than anything is being there as an encouragement as a coach. Listen more than you speak. I know we have a lot of things we've learned, but listening to others is going to be, again, the thing that even sets you free as a host or a business owner or a coach. Listening to those stories is going to make you even better and stronger and more brave. And being able to have that reciprocation, when we're coaches, we go in, we think, okay, the teacher has arrived. The student is ready, so the teacher is now present. I think we need to go into those conversations a lot more humble, in understanding that we may learn even more than the one that we're coaching. They may not go on to continue that podcast past one episode. I'm sorry, 90% of people who start a podcast do one episode and that's it, and they quit. And so they may not go further than that one episode. They may not even do that one episode, but you need to learn something from that exchange as well, and and just really tap into, ask yourself too, is this really what God's called me to do? I'd ask myself that a lot. I've worked everywhere from McDonald's to NASA, and each time I'm asking myself, is this really what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And those those um, those places where I was, the low man on the totem pole, and I'm looking at the supervisors on the job, thinking, okay, do I want their job? Most of the time, it was no. Most of the time, it was hell no. But what does that do? It gives us strength to tap into that dream and vision. Really, really pray hard. God, what have you called me to do? And if you know what that call is and you're not working on it, shame on you. At least be studying, do something, work toward that goal, and I think in all of that, and when you allow people to see you doing that, that's another form of coaching. So when people see you out there doing the thing that you said you were going to do, they're looking. A lot of times we don't get the reactions and the comments on the Facebook posts, but later on in a conversation years ago, after doing that exploit for God, somebody brings it up. Somebody brings it up, and you remember back and go, wow, okay, I don't remember you ever commenting on that or saying anything to me about that, but thanks. You saw that, and now you're looking at me going, wow, they actually did it, and it's encouraging you to do something. I think that coaching is more than just that, that in the Zoom or in the room chat. It's what people see you doing, and you taking the steps and doing those exploits, and people are looking at you. They're going, oh, if Bundy can do it, I can definitely do it. So that's my hope for people.
Dude, it's so true. And some oftentimes we think about ourselves into depending on who we're coaching or who we're speaking to, there is two things. One, this element of fear and element of humility, and I think they both intertwine. Where you're thinking, what am I going to give this guy? He's got it all. He's got the business and the millions and the car and the watch and the family. And but one Keith Kreller, the pastor of my old church, he said something to me, man, that it resonated so well with me. He said, Anderson, everybody looks good on Sunday morning. You don't know the skeletons of people's closet until you kind of do a deep dive. And trust me, I know a lot of skeletons. And it's so true. Because oftentimes we look at somebody else and we're like, I have nothing to give this person. And then you just have a quick conversation and you listen to them. You say, despite all the millions and the money and the business and the success, quote unquote, that you have built, you are so broken, just like me. So I love what you're doing because I think that there's a element again of that humility that you bring to the table. And most of us who do podcasts, we want to ensure that one, we stay humble, but we're learning from those who we're having a conversation with. And that, I think we're missing that. We're missing that based on just content and constant watching things. And we're just missing constant communication and relationship building and just having dinner with someone away from electronics. And you realize that what we're missing is just human interaction. So again, I thank you, brother. I think you're doing something great. I think your wife should be certainly proud of you, despite the fact that a lot of us oftentimes we're not proud of ourselves. But there are occasions where we go and say, "Well, I didn't do that bad. I I did what God asked me to do." And as long as we do that, I think we're in something great. I want to give you one last portion and open the floor for you to provide some of that expertise. I love for more people to go into the Morning Fuel podcast, and I want to hear you speak to a ton of different entrepreneurs and change lives the way that you're changing from a little place called Puerto Rico. Where can people find you? How can people work with you? I think you have so much to bring to the table. And I, again, thank you for all your words of wisdom and advice that you have given me and you have given on the podcast. But where can people find more of you and work with you on a one-to-one basis?
Okay, well, the main spot is morningfuelpodcast.com. You can apply to be a podcast guest, and you can also watch our previous episodes, and each week a new episode comes out. And then pick a platform. So if it's Instagram, John Bundy Official. If it is TikTok, it's Morning Fuel Podcast or Bundy Wan Kenobi. So during the pandemic, I got bored, so I'm a Bible reading Jedi on TikTok. So Bundy Wan Kenobi. That's just well, it's true, but I mean that's just an aside. So morningfuelpodcast.com, and if you look up Morning Fuel Podcast on any of the podcast platforms, you can find us. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, and YouTube. So YouTube's another way. And of course, if you want to start your own podcast, we have that available on the website as well. You can get on a call with us, and we'd be happy to help and teach you everything we know.
Fantastic. John, thank you so much. Again, working with John and hearing him speak and talk and putting it is so simplistic. Morningfuelpodcast.com. Go there if you want to be a guest or if you want to work directly with John to build your own podcast. That's the place to go. John, you've been fantastic. I have no doubt you and we're going to do a ton of different things together. We already have a few lined up that I won't disclose today, but I am blessed and thankful for being able to call you a friend. So I appreciate your time. And it's been nothing but amazing vibes and great pleasure of having you on, my friend. So thank you again. Thank you guys for listening. Goodbye.